First of all, thank you so much for the time. I know it's late there in Oslo, so thank you so much.
No worries.
So, the page that I have in which I'm going to do this interview is based on the context of things. You know, I like to show people about what comes before and what comes after. Well, you know, you have a very interesting background. So, first of all, I think taking the context of this film, I couldn't help but feel it speaks directly to the consequences of lacking context in the film. You know, we know for a fact that you were a primary school teacher for a few years, and I would like to ask you, was there a specific moment or an experience that told you that you needed to tell this particular story for your first film?
I mean, it was more like random bits and pieces, almost.
Yeah.
You know, that felt really right. I had the idea of the characters all of them are really, you know, from my heart and my soul. And then I heard this story about these two kids, and then I had been working in a primary school, so I knew kind of how the system worked and how difficult it would be for me to handle such a case like this, which I of course developed from the story I heard. And it became a really good story to tell about gray areas in our society, about traumas that moves in generations, about people who are victim and abusers at the same time. It just became a sandbox of different things I was concerned about intellectually, but also emotionally.
Yeah, and just through that same thing that you're talking about, like guilt is such a central force in this film, and like social, personal, and even inherited in the characters that we see in Elizabeth and Sarah. So I think it's interesting that you see something generational or a distortion in contemporary morality, you know, because at the end of the day, I think the film is a good conversation on the gray areas of morality. I don't know if you want to get a deep dive on that, because at the end of the day, we don't know what's happening, but we know that it's important that we can hurt people through narratives, you know. So
I mean, so much of the film is the story we tell about ourselves and others, and that story is so much based on imagination, is based on anxiety, on fear, on prejudice, on all these things. And I have a lot of those mechanisms myself, you know. So much of the things I'm thinking about is so much of the stories I think about myself or my life or my relationship or my friends is not real. It's based on
some subjectivity,
it's emotional history, some vulnerability, some, you know, other things, anxiety and fear. And I think it's just, and we see it so much in our society today, and it's gotten so much worse in a way, because also our leaders are telling crazy shit based on their prejudice, and I felt it was, so I wanted to tell that story in a sort of a micro cosmos, which happened.
No, yeah. I think you achieve it wonderfully. Just to clarify, I love the movie. At the end of the day, I love that you chose that ending, where in that specific rain scene, when we're seeing that the Renat character is standing in the rain and then everyone comes to her. I think that's a strong and visual way to telling us of reassuring truth. And yeah, I think that's interesting. So continuing with this topic, how was directing Renata in this sort of, it's a way of, I don't know, it's a performance that it's like walking through a tightrope, like control and collapse, and this subtle but deeply volatile anchored in silence, you know, because you have these dance parts that I think speak a lot of the emotional turmoil that Renata is facing, but also you are there with her. You're not exploding like this on a violent way, and it's always to communicate these tensions. I wanted to know how was collaborating with her, because I think it's a great way to speak with her, and the way you move the camera, no? That remembers us of Tarkovsky and Spielberg.
Oh, thank you so much for that.
Of course.
That is funny that you mentioned those two, because me and my cinematographer talked a lot about, everybody talks about Tarkovsky, but I talked a lot about Ivan's Childhood, which was Tarkovsky's first movie, and how he filmed, especially in the Berkshire forest scene. I wanted to, anyways. I mean, working with Renata, we had been working together one time before on a short film in 2016, and it was a very special and magical experience, and we wanted to do it again. So, and already then I had seen something very powerful in her, that she hadn't been allowed to show yet in the movies or the TV shows she was playing that at that period. So I wanted to write a very powerful character for her, with a lot of intensity and a lot of range and a lot of, as you say, volatility. So of course we talked about this role because I struggled to get it financed, and she was a really important moral support as well, because she loved the project and she loved the script and the character. So we talked back and forth about the character and the project for like almost 7-8 years before we were standing there first day of shooting and was like, oh my god, this is finally happening now. And we have kind of the same mentality, that we want to push each other to the limit, and we really did. And I mean, for an actor like Renata, you have to give her space and trust, because she's a very independent and very intuitive actor. So you have to be careful as a director not to take too much of her autonomy out of her. So it's a fine balance. She's also very analytical, and the analytical phase before shooting, I felt it was a very important way for me to direct her in the way I wanted, and then she could use her brilliant mind to make the resting work.
I think you got her best performance yet. Congratulations on that. And talking about the context and the way we are basically a result of what came before, and the way that we propose the things that come after us. You come from a family, obviously, where cinema has explored language, motherhood, identity, but you are you. You are your own person. So at the end of the day, I wanted to ask you, what did you consciously inherit, and why, and what did you want to break from your family, like with Armand?
What I consciously inherit?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we are part of our families, but we are our own person.
It's very difficult for me to say what I consciously inherit, because there was, I mean, there's one shot in the movie which is like a little hello to my grandfather, and it's like an Easter egg, because I knew that people were going to ask.
No, yeah.
Then I could have an answer for that, But to be honest, it was quite important for me to separate a little bit, but that is also very difficult, because first of all, they are part of my family and I have levels, and second of all, I mean, what filmmaker in the world is not influenced by Ingmar Bergman in one way or another? So it's like, so consciously I don't have inherited too much, but subconsciously I probably inherited quite a lot, Of course, because Renata's character, Elizabeth, she's a public figure and she's an actress, and even though it's not any of her story that is my grandmother's story, but the dancing scene, it's partly inspired, where everybody touches her. It's partly inspired by some of the events I have been to with my grandmother, and I see people flocking around her and touching her, and they have no distance.
There's no distance, no
awareness.
respect.
and I don't, and it's, and also, you know, the fact that she kind of enjoys it in the beginning and turns out to be more abusive in the end. That is not my grandmother's perspective, but that is my imagination maybe of that feeling.
And I think it's quite interesting because the two dance scenes that you have, I think I wouldn't thought in another way that you could have achieved like this emotional turmoil that you are reflecting on Renat's character. I thought that the camera was especially good, and I remember you were talking about Ivan's childhood and the birch tree scene, the way that he moves the camera, and I think that's just a beautiful way in not telling with words what is she feeling, right? So congratulations on that scene. Really, really, really worked. And I think I have 4 minutes, but I wanted to ask you one last question. Since we are at our channel like to know about the things that you see or the things that inspire you, what was the last great thing that you saw culturally, or a movie, something that inspired you, like the last thing that you saw?
The last thing I saw that really inspired me was Millennium Actress, the anime film by Satoshi Kon. You know, the same director that directed Perfect Blue. And Millennium Actress was one of, and I'm not like especially into animation at all. Mm-hmm. I watched this film, and it was one of the most beautiful, inspiring films I've seen in a long time. I'm working on a film right now that combines different times and dreams and fantasies and all things like that. And I wanted to, and I watch a lot of films that, you know, combine all these elements. And Millennium Actress does it in such an amazing way. I mean, I never seen someone navigate between past and present and fantasy and dreams in the way he does in that movie. So that was the last amazing thing. A good film.
We're gonna tell our viewers. I imagine if Perfect Blue for me is a masterpiece, I can only imagine for...
I mean, that's a masterpiece. Millennium Actors, it's better, I think.
Oh my God.
It's absolutely amazing.
Halfdan, thank you so much. I will keep on talking, but I have like a limited time. But just let me tell you, like, you have a great voice. It was an honor to see this movie, and I'm thinking I would like to keep seeing your work. So thank you very much from El Contexto, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.